Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are. Hosted by Desiree Duffy.
Welcome to Books That Make You. I'm your host, Desiree Duffy, and we're talking about books that make you wonder about alternate histories. We've all wondered, what if, when it comes to historic scenarios? What if Rome never fell? What if Constantine never created the Council of Nicea? What if Napoleon won at Waterloo? What if Hitler had developed the atomic bomb first? That last one gives you shivers, right? Would we be living in Philip K. Dick's Man in the High Castle had that happened? Why didn't it happen? Have you ever wondered? Our guest today took that train of thought and asked, what if a valet altered the course of World War II? Let's get real. Hitler never intended for his empire to be destroyed. He was on the path to world domination with the Third Reich. However, what if it was his valet who wanted Hitler destroyed? Apparently, that is the remarkable story recorded in Heinz Linge's journals, and that forms the premise of the book, A Fly on the Wall by M.L. Winitsky. M.L. Winitsky. He's a former university professor, historian, consultant, and researcher for television. His lifelong academically informed fascination with alternate history led to writing the book A Fly on the Wall. And it's the first in his 3-volume magical realism epic. M.L., hello, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
This is going to be fun. I have a feeling you're fun, aren't you?
I'd say that, but it sounds a little incestuous. But
oh my! Oh no! Okay, I'm just talking the historical history and just imagining all of these different alternate possibilities. So,
well, no, I really enjoy how you introduced me. I mean, at least I didn't have to look my best.
That is true. That's the benefit of radio
but
and
yeah,
podcasting.
One of the things that distinguishes what I was doing from the one you talked about, the Man in the High Castle, and also the Plot Against America, is the fact that most of these alternative histories are about things. What if this, for example, in The Man in the High Castle, Dick was inspired by a Civil War history. What if the South had won? Roth, what if America had elected Lindbergh instead of? Mine really isn't whether Hitler won or lost. He lost. In my story, he still lost. The difference is, why did he lose? And a lot of times people say, well, he made a lot of mistakes. Well, Hitler didn't get to power by making mistakes. Once he got into power, he made a lot of mistakes. Why did he make them? How did he make them? And what I wanted to do is explain that in an alternative history fashion. So that's the one thing that I wanted to distinguish is my alternative history is the history of a person and how he influenced the history of a nation.
Right, and it's Heinz Linge. Can you tell us more about him? Who was this valet?
Well, he was a very young person when he was a street urchin. The real one or mine, they are very different.
Why don't we start with a history lesson and give us the real story, and then we'll segue into how this inspired your story.
All right. Well, in many ways, he's not a lot different from Stevens in Remains of the Day. He went into service as a very young person. He had no education of any length. He was an apprentice bricklayer. He was a guard in the SS, and he finally got selected by Hitler to be his valet. He was like 25 when he became a valet. And what he did basically is what a valet does, the physical things, make sure that his messages were delivered, oversee the making of his bed. He timed his dressing. Hitler liked to see how fast he could get dressed, and he had his valet sit with a stopwatch timing him. So I mean, these absolutely prosaic, mundane types of activities was most of his life. Most of the people around him thought he knew much more because of his proximity to the Fuhrer. A visiting dignitary would take Linge aside and ask him, what is the Fuhrer's mood today? Linge would always say, how would I know? I'm only the valet. In his own memoirs, which are an embarrassment, unless you're Stevens in Remains of the Day, you see nothing of Linge. It's all about Hitler. He was basically writing a book about Hitler where he, the valet, fades into the background. When I saw Remains of the Day, I was angry. I said, I can't permit this, and I wasn't thinking of Linge at the time. I was thinking of Stevens. Later, I was introduced to Linge, and I said, I have to do something about this. After reading the memoirs of the actual valet, and I said, I'm going to write a story about this.
And so that's how you came up with the idea to write this book.
Yeah, it was serendipitous in many ways, because just after I'd seen the Remains of the Day, somebody loaned me the book on the autobiography of Heinz Linge, which is really an as told to type thing. And I said, my God, this is Stevens. And it kind of inspired me to say, well, what if? And I'd always had a what if mentality. So I said, well, let's create a new lingo. Let's see what happens. And the result is a fly on the wall.
And it's classified as magical realism. So let's break it down. Is it true? Is it fiction? Is parts of it true, possible, or is it more of a plausible scenario?
Oh, there's nothing really plausible about it. It's magical in the sense that things happen for which there is no explanation. Do I provide one? Some might read my book and say, yeah, that makes sense. I can see that. Others will read it and say, I don't get it. I mean, is it real or is it Memorex? I mean, they really don't know. I wanted to preserve the mystery of it. The magical quality should be up in the air, because this is a guy who is not the real Linge. This is a guy who has a photographic, and I mean photographic, memory. And he has visions, he has hallucinations, he has visitations. And the point is, are these real or are they not? And sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. And I wanted the reader to wonder, is this one of them or is this another kind? I don't like to spell things out for people. I give them the credit of suspending disbelief. I mean, people can watch cartoons and they get drawn in as if these were real. I trust that people will draw the proper conclusions, and either way, it works.
And as a former professor, you are a historian, so you make no claims that this is nonfiction. This is fiction. This is imagined, but it's just based on.
Well, because that it's the right question to ask me, because when I wrote this, there were certain guidelines, canons of scholarship that I still had to bring to it. I mean, I couldn't have Hitler attack Poland in 1942. I felt limited by the timeline. So in September 1st, 1939, Germany attacks Poland. Now, there are many things like that. He's writing a journal. Linge is writing a journal. It's a day-by-day journal with significant gaps so he can fit even 3 volumes. The point is, I try to make the events as real as possible, the actual historical events, the attack of the Low Countries, the attack on France. All of these things happened when they happened. Why they happened and how they happened is where I crossed the line from nonfiction to fiction.
Gotcha. So really we're talking about historical fiction here. So let's dig into, why did you write this book? Why did you feel compelled to tell this story?
Well, I've been fascinated not only by alternative history, but by spy fiction, by suspense novels, by mystery novels. I've always been drawn to that. Books, John Le Carre, Frederick Forsyth, Trevanian, and I was always interested in that aspect of things. Maybe if you re-ask that question, because I'm going to get drawn into other things if.
Sure. I'm just curious, as an author, as a writer, as somebody who has a story to tell. All authors, all storytellers have something that drives them, whether it's the need or the desire to share their creativity because they want people to think about the world in a different way. Quite frequently.
I was hoping you'd do that.
Yeah, quite frequently when we're looking at historical fiction or alternate realities, dystopian, for example, as a genre, a lot of times there's a moral or a lesson or there's something that we want the reader to walk away with.
Well, I'd like to think that was the case with me. It's more a matter of self-analysis. Am I saying that people write about themselves? Am I Linge? I draw on what I know. I draw on what interests me. And throughout the writing of this, because I did write by the seat of my pants, I didn't have an elaborate plan. I always asked the question as I wrote. I could see this mentally. What would I do, given me? What would I do if I were Linge in this situation? Given the structure that I created and the people around me and what have you, how would I behave? What would I be saying to myself while someone else was spewing idiocy and nonsense? For example, when Hitler would rug chew, because that was one of his styles, was rug chewing, meaning screaming, yelling, stomping his feet as if he were a sumo wrestler. How would I react to that? And because of all of my interest in spy novels, I became the spy in my own novel. I was watching me watching him. Mm-hmm. So if there's a larger moral, I'm not Philip Roth. I don't have an ethnic agenda. I'm not in the science fiction type who's interested in the what ifs of morality. My character basically goes out of his way to destroy Hitler for reasons that have very little to do with morality on the surface.
That's really fascinating that you took this character's perspective, melded it with your own by asking, what you would do if that was you there. In the course of writing this, and I know that you are a historian and you probably did a lot of research, what did you discover about Hitler or the Third Reich that people may not know?
Well, it's a difficult question because most of the writers about him only have his writings. The thing I took, and the research I did, I found much more interesting the work that Linge did when he was captured by the Russians and forced to write a book about Hitler. So there's actually called the Hitler book by Linge. And I learned that many of the things that Hitler did, he didn't want to know about. Now, this is controversial. If people are seeking controversy in a novel, I'll go out and say that my Hitler is evil, but not a participant in his own evil.
What do you mean by that?
For example, let me give you one really quick example of what happens. A movie was produced, an actual theater movie was produced about that had to do with euthanasia, which was a very big thing in Nazi Germany, the T4 program. And Hitler sets my character up as the projectionist. I show many movies, and I have many views about these movies. I'm pretty cinematic in my approach. Hitler announces the movie, said, "You'll enjoy this movie." He has his guests, and then he walks out. And everybody, they all know him. They all know that they don't come to him, number one, with bad news, ever. Two, they don't come to him with anything distasteful. Hitler can rant for 14 hours about annihilation and liquidation of his enemies and tearing their throats out. But when it comes to actually hearing about the actual tearing of the throat, he runs out of the room. Now, is this true? Did he really do that, or was he an active participant in his own evil? Mm-hmm. And by active, I mean physically present, giving the orders specifically. Mm-hmm. And one of the examples, you mentioned about being a historian. One of the things I took very seriously was the story of Becket and Henry II, where Becket, who was made Archbishop of Canterbury by Henry II, actually to have a crony as his chief of religion in England, becomes a thorn in his side and is stopping Henry from doing many of the things he wants to do. And eventually he's had enough. Henry's had enough. And what he says is, "Won't someone rid me of this meddlesome priest?" Now, it doesn't take much to figure out what he meant by that. Won't someone rid me? But he never said, kill him.
Right.
I want you to go out there and kill him. I want him to disappear forever. No, what he said was something that, won't someone rid me of this meddlesome priest? And what I do is I make Hitler much more of a Henry II.
Mm-hmm. And he's a wimp in a lot of ways. He doesn't come right out and say it. He's a wimp, and he wants somebody else to do his dirty work, and he infers or implies so that he gets what he wants, but that way he can say, "Oh, that's not what I really meant," or "Oh, you did that. I didn't do it."
Exactly. In fact, many times in the course of the novel, he actually my character says that about him. Plausible deniability.
Yep.
I think the term now wasn't used then, but that's one of the things about Hitler that perhaps people didn't know. They see him as a much more active player, a much more what I would call precise player.
Exactly. And let's talk about plausible deniability, because that is something that has become more and more common in politics, in the world, in the way people conduct themselves. It's basically a way for leaders to, get their way. They get what they want, but they find ways to distance themselves from it so that they can put somebody else in their place, a scapegoat, so to speak. So with all of that in mind, I'm going to ask the provocative question. And did we learn our lesson, or is history repeating itself? We have hate groups on the rise, white supremacy. There's a lot of divisiveness in this world today. What do you think about that?
The thing that I would say is that we've gone beyond the need for plausible deniability. What we have now is implausible deniability that's absolutely accepted. It used to have to be plausible. I gave people a lot of credit then for at least the need for plausibility. Now that is absolutely unnecessary. We have someone who says one thing today, the opposite tomorrow, a third thing the third day, and all three are believed, at least by the supporters. That is not encouraging. Plausibility implies intelligence to some degree. Implausible deniability and acceptance of that implausible deniability removes the intelligence factor for me. And that's dangerous and very discouraging.
Yes, it is. And it's a dangerous and discouraging world sometimes that we live in. But
I name no names.
I name no names either. I'm with you. But I still have hope for the future. So let's just cross our fingers and hold on tight.
Yeah, I'd like everyone to read my book, even those who can't read.
Exactly. Well, it's a very provocative, thoughtful, creative book. And now this is the first in a series. So are you working on the next one? Can you tell us a little bit more about the series?
Well, volume one takes us to the eve of World War II. Volume two is from the September 1st to 1940, the end of 1941, beginning of 1942. Volume three. And I've already finished. I'm in the editing stages of volume two. My personal editing. Volume three will take us from probably 1942 to the middle of 45, which is basically the end. And I have about a fourth of that done.
Okay.
And because of that seat of the pants approach I take, I really don't know what's going to happen. I didn't know in volume two what was going to happen, short of the actual events because of the canons of scholarship. I mean, he attacks when he has to attack. It's basically how Linge manages to create the situation in which Hitler will make the mistakes he makes in order to lose. And why? Why does he do it? I mean, I want some mystery in here about that as well. Why does Linge go? I mean, here's a nothing person. I mean, he was a vagrant, an apprentice bricklayer, a 25-year-old valet, a servant, a menial, who actually orchestrates the defeat of the Third Reich. Now, what kind of person is that? I'd like to think it's me.
And that's the provocative question that you kind of throw out there. It's this big matzo ball that's just hanging there, because we'd like to think that people are heroes, or they do things that turn out to be good for the greater good. But maybe that's not always the case.
No, it isn't.
I love it. I love it. You're such an interesting guy, and this is such an interesting take on Hitler and the Third Reich and everything. So tell me, where can people find you online, find the book? How can they order the book?
Well, the ebook is available for pre-order at Amazon.com, while under MarvinWinitsky.com, and that's MarvinWinitsky, all one word, as if Winitsky wasn't enough of a word. And then people should be sure to join the mailing list to stay up to date on coming release and other news about the book. And as a thank you for signing up, those who do check in will receive a free ebook essay on the inspirations for the book and the differences between the historical and fictional Heinz Linge. Much of that we discussed, but this would be in a little more detail.
Yeah, I bet you that's interesting, because I'm so fascinated between the differences between fact and fiction.
Well, yes, and so the MarvinWinitsky.com, that one word, would be for the pre-order link and the mailing list and all of that. So any other way would be just emailing me at WINITSKY at AOL.com. That's my email address.
Perfect. ML Winitsky, or Marvin, as you've revealed to everybody. You do go by ML. I found that on Goodreads and on Amazon too. So that's the author name people should look for when searching for the book, A Fly on the Wall: The Discovered Journals of Heinz Linge, Valet to Adolf Hitler, Volume 1, an excellent book. Thank you for joining us today, ML. I appreciate it.
And thank you so much.
And once again, my name is Desiree Duffy, the host of Books That Make You. Thank you, everyone, for being with us here today. And as always, you can find out more about all of the books that make you who you are on our website. That is booksthatmakeyou.com. Plus, follow us. We're on Instagram and Facebook, and we have a mailing list too, where we'll send you our newsletter. And you know what? We're always giving away books and having lots of contests and fun things going on. So once again, go to booksthatmakeyou.com to discover more. Until next time, all of my book buddies, please do me a favor and enjoy all of the books that make you exactly who you are.
The executive producer for Books That Make You is Desiree Duffy. Produced and sound mastered by Phil Giangrande. Engineering by Dave Nabox. Social media and promotion by Bree Sweeter. For more, visit booksthatmakeyou.com.